Shalom, shalom to all our brothers and sisters everywhere abroad in the world today. I am your brother, your friend, sent unto you to share another wisdom. We shalom all our new brothers and sisters that have joined our channel to now widen the space for education and to widen the heart to receive understanding of the knowledge. So today we will be talking about explaining the times, Yahuwah's prophetical books with introductions to us. Now we going to be doing a lot of jumping around, so I hope everyone have a Bible, a good downloaded Bible. Like we do here at IVI, we like to also sometimes look up keywords, but hopefully, most likely, we won't probably in this study, but we never know. So to be ready, have a good dictionary Bible downloaded to your phone as well, a Merriam-Webster, whichever dictionary you prefer in your language. We have such a very beautiful thing that's going to be released today here. So with that said, let's go into prayer, everyone, so we can get started. Almighty Father, my Father, I thank you for opening the hearts of brothers and sisters around the world, allowing them to be found by your grace, delivered by your peace, enjoyed by your love, surrounded by your embrace. May you continue us, Father, as you have activated us, brothers and sisters of the 144,000, to appear all around the world, picking up the puzzle pieces that therefore you have planted, so more of our brothers and sisters have a clear understanding, not only for them, but for their children. And may they have peace and protection, because we know when one is coming out of hell, of the earth, one cannot go freely without the help and support of your mighty and almighty hand, Father. So I thank you today for coming in the spirit, speaking through the vessels of me, teaching my brothers and my sisters as me as well, to be delivered and fully steadfast, understanding that you have given us this VIP into the sweet room of your honey and the very much love of your compassion. So thank you, Father, for hearing all our prayers and making sure you continue to do the things that you are doing, getting us to the proper time. Amen. So let's look at, many times we hear the topic come up, 70 AD. And we look at the fall of Jerusalem, and we see the catastrophicness of what happened in that time in 70 AD. But my understanding from what we're going to be showing and talking and discussing about is going to take us before 70 AD to an event that shadows the events, to give us the proper explainable, the times of Yahuwah's prophetical book, which we hold as the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, with the introductions from every scripture that is manifested by my Father, is to us, Israelites, scattered all around the world, and to those who wasn't scattered, but was placed around the world, which was a Gentile nation, Gentile people. So we're going to be looking at two sets here. But here it is. We're going to be looking at before 70 AD in these events as 1,000 down to the 1,000 generation, as my father has said, from the hundreds down to the 1,000 generation, then the end will come. But now here it is. We're going to be viewing before 70 AD to give ourselves an understanding, like in the Hebrew, pas. When you say that in Hebrew, pas, we're looking at entire. So here it is. When you say that, we're talking about the entire explainable times of Yahuwah, prophetical books, which is going to be, here it is, the very VIP introduction to us for our understanding. That here it is, what we're doing today, regathering, coming together, reassembling, being activated, allowing ourselves to now understand that sin has taken many brothers and sisters, but not all of us. So now going back before 70 AD in the events, it's going to show you what brothers and sisters are doing right now today in this event, which was before 70 AD as they did before. We are repeating, but very much strongly in the efforts of Yahweh. Why? Because he says, I'm raising up 144,000, right? Of strong brothers and sisters that will be commanded under my word and listen and understand me, just as I had done with Paul, who was very hated and was very separated because the Gentile world, and here it is, you had those who were serving Yahshua and Yahweh. Because we look at Moses, as Moses wrote the commandments, and Aaron. So now here it is, pas means entire. So now here it is, inas, imnas. So now here it is, we now say, now we're talking about the whole nation or all nations when we speak. So now this was what Father was speaking in these languages and in his tongue to get everybody to understand that he comes in a new commandment, but here it is in an Old Testament, which is still of Moses, but have now been renewed. So now let's look at some logic notes that I took here. Now, when we look at how the 12 was sent, we've seen that therefore they wasn't sent to go to the Gentiles, but we see that they were sent to be among the brethren of Israel and to take the gospel unto them. But we see now also Paul, who was also Saul, was also told by Yeshua to take the gospel to the Gentiles. Now here's a little logic notes here, because when we look at what Paul had did, we've seen that here it is, he was explaining to the 11, and that here it is, what they should be doing now is basically giving the grace unto the people, which is through the Spirit, and therefore moving away from the physicalities of seeing things and physicalness, doing everything physical. But here it is, he was explaining to them to start to do things now in biblical sense. But here it is, this before 70 AD is not Paul's time, but now here it is, we looking at 70 AD before this time, which we're going to be discussing. So now my logic notes here, let me see here. We know Paul was never supported. Even when he got saved by grace, we know that the brothers and sisters still didn't trust Paul because they didn't think that he was saved. So here it is. He had to put in vicious works by showing his teachings to the Gentiles in order for the brethren, for them to pick up that, yes, he has actually changed. But then here it is. We know the story. He was brought unto the brothers and so on and so on. But now as we look at the law of Moses, it made allowances for the people outside of the Hebrew race to convert to Hebrewism. So now we know why Paul went to the Gentiles, because he was therefore better fitted for that area. And we see that Yah says, now listen, he says, at the time of Moses made the allowance for the people outside of Hebrew or the Hebrew race to convert to Hebrewism. But the outsiders who wanted to convert had to be what? Circumcised. Now, y'all remember the time of Abraham and also Moses, and every Israelite had to be circumcised. And here's on the 8th day in order to be keeping the standard of the law of Yahuwah, the Father. So it says to follow all of the rules of Israel. And it says first to be a Hebrew, in my note, and made a Jew. One had to convert to Judaism or Hebrewism, which required circumcision, right? Now then, from one conversion to Judaism or Hebrewism, one to become now Christian. So now we see, brothers and sisters, that the problem lies in our beginning. That's why we're talking about before 70 AD, because here it is. A lot of times we talk about 70 AD or what happened. But let's talk about before this and how it matches up with today with our brothers and sisters. So now here it is. Christianity have come into play, right? And we also know that this hinders or bring a stumbling block among the righteousness of serving Yahweh. Because here it is, we know Exodus chapter 20, 3 through 15, these are laws commanded through Moses, as we have stated just a moment ago. But here it is, Christianity have come out, and here it is after 70 AD. But before 70 AD, we can see that the development of serving Yah was being circumcised. And it was also, therefore, keeping the Passover. And it was also keeping all the feasts. And it was also, therefore, going to the priest with all problems. And here it is for solutions. But when Christianity came, we got confused people all over the world. Why? Because here it is. It was a hindrance or a stumbling block. So now we know that Paul was fitted to go to the Gentiles because the Gentile people are difficult people when talking to them. So Paul was able to talk to the Gentiles better than the 11 or the 12. So now we see he went into Europe, and here it is. We know that Paul also was circumcised, but he taught about uncircumcised and being circumcised versus circumcised, as he was commanded by Yah. And we see that as being circumcised, it was a requirement for your salvation. Now, these are my logic notes, because here it is. A lot of brothers and sisters who are coming into the gospel of this truth don't understand there's a beginning and there's a middle and there's an ending. So while we're looking at Explainable, the Times, Yahuwah's prophetical books with introduction to us, we're looking at the similarities of many things that people doesn't discuss when we're looking at 70 AD, how it matches up to everything that was going on before 70 AD, before the temple fell. The people was doing the same thing as what they're doing right now. So here it is. This is why we're discussing this, because it's going to get even deeper. These are just the logic notes. So bear with me, everyone. So now we know the Old Testament had been fulfilled by Yeshua and receded into the background was the old merging with the new. And we know here it is, it came into the foreground, the Old Testament and all of its laws, its rules, and its regulations. And we know that when Christianity came into play, many embraced the Sunday law instead of keeping the Sabbath law. So now here it is. Like I say, there's a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Same thing for a person's life. So before 70 AD, we're looking at the events of situations of how different religions came in and stole certain Israelites and turned them from Hebrew to Judah, which added a J later on down the line, right? Because there's no J in the Hebrew alphabet. So now understand, they started keeping or had changed the Sabbath, which is Saturday, to Sunday. And then here it is, they made all of the Hebrew Israelites embrace that. Now, remember, at the times, many of you can remember the movies you have seen when Yeshua was about to get crucified. And here it is, the Israelites, who were Sanhedrins, Pharisees, and so on, high men of the cloth, supposedly, and they were betrayers when they was asking for Pilate to crucify Yeshua, because they said that we don't have no king but Caesar. So now this is clearly that Christianity was coming into the forefront. Now we're looking at before 70 AD. We're looking at before the fall of the temple, as I am discussing. So now here it is. We are looking deeply in the crystal ball. Why my Father is taking us here? So you can see what happened, well, how the people's temperament was before 70 AD. Why Yeshua was in that situation among many brothers and sisters who were born way before him, who knew about the Mosaic law and covenant, knew about also Abraham, and here it is, knew that there was a Savior that would come to save the people and to introduce a better covenant, right? So we know all this. So we got to ask ourselves, before 70 AD, what was the people doing? What made them get into the fall of the temple that led of the judgment of Yah on the temple to bring it to demolish? Okay. So now here it is. We're seeing why Paul in this time zone, different than 70 AD after, okay, Yeshua, and at the time, he didn't know Yeshua outwardly, okay, different parts of the world and Israel. So here it is, all knew of a coming Messiah, though. Keep that in mind. So now here it is. Many of those brothers and sisters who wanted the crucifixion of Yeshua and before the crucifixion of Yeshua had changed the laws of Yahuwah. They started embracing paganism. And now, as we see with Christianity, they changed the Sabbath to Sunday. So now, understanding, worship day, the last day of the week to the first day of the week. See how that man had changed that? So now, while we're seeing before 70 AD, why I even put that out there? Because my Father want everyone to realize the state of mind people are in before the action is even concurred, or here it is, referred in the streets, or here it is on the news, or in the newspaper, on the radio, wherever you hear. And here it is, he always makes sure you see man is constantly changing my laws. So now he says, in my logics, Jerusalem rejected him. Because here it is, when they said crucify him, they was rejected him. They was saying, no, we have no king. But who's Caesar? So now here it is, you're going to realize why the fall of Jerusalem or the temple had to be destroyed. Everything had to be destroyed because of the people's mindset. But now we're explaining the times, Yahuwah's prophetical books were introductions to us. Because Yah says, I want you to understand why everything happened. There's a time for everything, right? So now in my notes, As you see, Jerusalem rejected our Messiah. And if not all, Europe, Asia, Manor, and here it is, and many others who came to their plot to therefore destroy the truth or take the truth or temper the truth. So now in my logic notes, we see now from an H, it became a J. From Hebrew to Judaism. So now here it is, we're seeing constant change. And now you're seeing before 70 AD, the mindset that led up to the destruction of the temple and the destruction of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. So now here it is, we're seeing now at the Western Wall, we have Israelis bowing to the wall, and here it is praising towards the wall, towards the Dome of the Rock. Now looking again, now and here in my logic notes, we know that almost 20 years of faithful and fruitful ministry to Europeans, Paul finally, here it is, was favorable, here it is, to the apostles later in time, right? We've seen Paul become now who was Saul to Paul. And then we see that the rest of the apostles, once they seen that he was really saved by the salvation of Yahshua, he became acceptable, or they were convinced that here it is, Paul was bringing a clearer understanding that they didn't have unto the Hebrew people. So now we're going to get a little deeper here. Hope everyone got their phones. Because here it is. The title is not before 70 AD. I'm using that as a reference to the Explaining the Times, Yahuwah's prophetical books with introductions to us. With the logic notes to show you the example. See, people want a crystal ball. This is why so many people play with witchcraft, Ouija boards, calling or summoning up demons, right? As we can see in the Bible, as many times we have seen Samuel. Now, we're looking at a time, I'm picking a time event as my father is instructing, as I am so obedient in the spirit to allow him to show us why things had to be done, here it is, in 70 AD. Many of our brothers have the resource material or have heard and understood that destruction of the temple was destroyed. Solomon's temple was destroyed 70 AD, okay? And so on, and after that, many things happened after that, right? So now here to stick with me. So now here it is. The title is not before 70 AD. This is just me throwing this out to reference to what we're finna get into. So now, as you have seen, as I've shown in the logic note, Christianity changed or helped change Hebrew Israelites into Christians and into every other religion through Catholicism. Because here it is, we got to keep Rome, okay, in sight, because most of the crucifixion came after Rome learned how to do these things from the Persians. Okay, the Persians was the first people to use the crucifixion. The Romans copied it from the Persians. Okay, now all of this is before 70 AD, because here it is, these plans were coming into the making as we revolve and go forward into 70 AD. But as we go before 70 AD, before the fall, this have to be explained, because here it is, Yah wants to give you the insight of why people do things and why things happen, and here it is, and why certain events must take place. Because an end, like I said, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, right? So now Christianity came into play, and it dissuaded many brothers and sisters from accepting Yahweh to accepting Jesus, Lord, and God, and so on and so on. Okay? So now we see that even before 70 AD, wickedness was in the world. Okay? Because we had Adam and Eve, right? So now here it is. You can see how just a little bit of far we done got already to 70, before 70 AD, to see why destructions and judgments of my father, your father, have been put on not only Israel and reactivated Israelites who now have been rewoken, but here's even for the Gentiles who are basically waking up. Because here it is, the disturbance of the world is being shaped. So now here it is. Why I use before 70 AD? Because here it is. It felt more relevant to take us this direction as Father has instructed, so you can see why what happened after 70 AD. So now Christianity have played a big part in the background of this, of changing laws and helping laws be changed for other brothers and sisters not to follow the truth. Now we know Europe and Asia, and we know that Paul went into these locations, taking the gospel to those Gentile who later became so-called Jewish or Judean, who imposed on the whole world also Christianity, which came out of Europe. Okay. All of this came out of Europe. Remember Joseph? Noah had 3 sons. Okay. And we know the story that with the Egyptians, Moses had to be a dark-skinned man or a brown-skinned man to be in Egypt in the northern parts of Africa, because Judah, here it is, was in the northern parts, as we see Esau, right, and Jacob, and we go to that story. But now he says, aren't you the Egyptian? Remember that in the book when the Greek thought Paul was an Egyptian? And then we see this in Acts 21 and through 37 and 40. Now, understand that this is a twofold intent. That's why I say before 70 AD, everyone, because here it is. The topic is Explainable the Times, Yahuah's prophetical books, with the introduction to us. So we're still talking about prophetical book. Okay, so keep that in mind. And here it is. We're going to actually be going to scriptures in the books, which are prophetical books, basically showing you a puzzle piece as it's coming together here to show you even this curse and this evil and the judgments that came from Father. Here it is, had to come because the people were already out of sync of his laws. So now that brings a twofold intent. Now, take a piece of paper or a note here, because you want to take these notes down, because as we go into the precepts of the Bible, you're going to want this to lace it up with your logic over your precept. So now, number one, you want to write to confirm Hebrew Christians by showing that Judaism had to come to an end through the fulfillment by Yahweh of the whole purpose, fulfilling the whole law. Hope you all wrote that down. Okay, that would be number one. This is why we're talking before 70 AD to get caught up to why and what happened after 70 AD. Number two, the passages that we're going to be going into, here it is, will show you the danger that was ever present, to the Hebrew or Hebrews or Israelites who profess to believe or to become believers either by a Gentile or a Hebrew. Because remember, Paul said you're neither Hebrew or Greek or Jew. Because here it is, the new have come under the law in spirit of Yeshua. So now here it is, you neither Hebrew or Gentile or Jew or Greek. Keep writing. It is clear from Acts that even the strongest of believers, watch this, because remember I said Judah came out of the north, Palestines are at war with Israel. Palestines come from who? Esau, Judah, and Shem. Okay. So now my notes, as I'm constantly with the logics, this is a clear act that even the strongest of those believers in Philistine or Palestine were held to a strange mingling with the Hebrew, here it is, who were following the law. So here it is, we have a cluster of mixed people at this time. And as we have it now, those who believe and those who don't believe, those who serve and those who are confused and don't want to serve their own way. But here it is, everything in the Hebrew Bible comes with instructions. It have to be explained. And this is showing you before 70 AD, here it is, Yah was explaining. People just wasn't listening. So now here it is, we're in the same demonstration today in this world, in this time, in this generation, with our people. So now here it is, you have to look at the example in order to have a correction. So that's why I use before 70 AD. Because here it is, this is going to allow us to show us through Paul